Okay, good morning, friends. I want to extend a warm welcome to you today. Everyone is welcome here. You are welcome here regardless of your age, your race, your income, your religion, or the gender with which you identify. You are welcome here regardless of who you love, who you vote for, the regrets that burden you, or the mistakes you have made. In this safe community, we support each other in the sacred task of becoming, celebrate the transcending mystery of life, and rely on the transforming power of love. Here we revere the words of the great teachers such as Jesus, the Buddha, and Confucius. It is, however, the task of every UU to be their own Buddha, their own Jesus, their own Confucius. It is our work as a community to walk with each other along the spiritual pathways that lead toward happiness, compassion, and life fully lived. And while we are a safe harbor where there is solace and healing, we are also a launching pad from which we are propelled into the tumult of life to live courageously, justly, and lovingly. In this sacred place, we create the structures that lift up the downtrodden, set the captives free, and heal the brokenhearted. Here we have learned that to be fully human is to be fully divine, and that with a little help from our friends, we can each tell our own unique story. Okay, so this is written by Jim McConnell, and I'm just reading it for him. Dear friends, I'm out of town visiting my kids in California. I hate to miss what looks like a very interesting service. Lisa Fuller will be delivering a message on our theme for today, the spirituality of disagreement. She is inspired by a favorite sermon of the Reverend Beth Lefever, a good friend of mine and a previous minister of this congregation. Additionally, the story for all ages, Have You Filled a Bucket Today, provides us with a really useful metaphor for relating to others. Speaking of disagreement, several weeks ago, I had a small part in Silas Loren's Eagle Scout ceremony at Surrett Nature Center. I enjoy these kinds of events because it gives me a chance to chat with people I don't normally encounter. One of the couples I talked with at length were United Methodists, my old denomination. They shared with me that they had chosen, because of issues surrounding the ordination of LGBTIQ persons into the ministry, to start a movement to separate their church from United Methodism. After spending tens of thousands of dollars on legal fees, they were able to separate. I felt sad. It seems to me that we religious people should be an example to secular society. In these times of increasing anxiety and acrimonious division, we should be showing the world that honest disagreement is the high road to spiritual growth and useful knowledge, and that you can't get those things if you take your chips and go home to where everybody thinks like you do. The trick of learning and growing from disagreement is to stay in the game and continue to love and respect each other, even when that is very hard to do. Enjoy today's service.
This is my haiku that I created for Buff. My heart warmed with light, looked around and saw the source. Friends were that bright light.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Lisa Fuller. The Reverend Beth Lefever served Buff's pulpit and congregation in the early 2000s. In October of 2016, at her Neshoba UU church, she gave a sermon titled Us and Them, which she opened with these words. Whenever I come to believe something strongly, I've come to believe it after a careful, to my mind, reasoning. I've considered the arguments, studied the wider parameters and finer nuances of the thing, talked it over with at least a few people whose intellects I trust, and hence arrived at what I have come to believe is, of course, logical, rational, and reasonable. Therefore, she wrote, she's perplexed, incredulous even, to find that there are some who disagree with her. Now, I personally am more likely to read varying viewpoints from sources I trust rather than seek out discussion. But like Reverend Beth, I do believe that if I present my argument logically and passionately enough, that others will see the error of their ways and become convinced of my rightness. However, I am also a benefit of the doubt person. If someone I respect has a vastly different point of view from mine, I'm very interested in learning more about their perspective. Our Buff minister, Reverend Jim McConnell, encourages the use of the Socratic method of asking and answering questions to stimulate critical thinking, draw out ideas and underlying presuppositions in an effort to find common ground. He likes to respond to antithetical statements with something along the lines of, "That's an interesting point of view. Can you tell me more about how you came to believe it?" In addition to attempting to follow Reverend Jim's lead when presented with ideas that disagree from my own, I am also a fan of Don Miguel Ruiz's Code of Conduct, the 4 Agreements. Be impeccable with your word. Don't take anything personally. Don't make assumptions, and do your best. The key points for disagreement, of course, being don't take anything personally and don't make assumptions. Back to Reverend Beth. Most of us in the Unitarian Universalist tradition tend to be somewhat like-minded about such ideologies as religion, politics, and social justice issues. But it's a mistake to assume we are all in one camp, or even in one campground, on either the ideologies of religion or politics, because we are not. We are not a people who easily share one accord. That's what makes us so interesting to ourselves and to others, and what animates our conversations. Folks assume you share one view, and that gets us into trouble. We are not all Democrats. We are not all anti-gun. We are not all religious humanists, secular humanists, or agnostics. We are not all middle class, college educated, or intellectuals, lovers of books, art, or music. Those who feel or think differently than our individual selves, those who disagree with us, feel as righteous in their beliefs as we do in our own, and likely carry their beliefs with largely the same heartfelt good intentions that we do. When compromise is difficult, agreement unattainable, it can make moving forward in relationship painful, disagreeable. And it can make relationships fragile and tenuous. I want to break from Reverend Beth for just a moment and add here that over the past several years, our denomination has experienced significant disagreements on issues, including the Eighth Principle Project, the Gadfly Papers, which were self-published by Reverend Todd Eckloff, and some denominational hiring issues. Now we have the likely Article 2 amendment adoption next year, a significant change to the UUA bylaws, qualifying our traditional principles with shared covenants, among other concerning or welcome changes, depending on one's point of view. Buffers who attended an Article 2 workshop here unanimously voted against the changes in a straw poll earlier this year. And at our annual meeting in June, the majority voted to direct the delegates representing Buff at June's denomination-wide General Assembly to vote against the proposed changes. What will we do next year when, as mentioned by our congregation's General Assembly delegates in a recent issue of Buff Announce, what will we do when the proposed Article 2 changes are likely voted into UUA bylaws at the 2024 General Assembly? What will we do? I expect there will be disagreements on how to proceed. How will we work through those disagreements? Hopefully, not by making assumptions about what other people are thinking and feeling, wanting, or expecting, not by taking alternative views personally, not by thinking those folks are wrong, I'm right. Disagreement is often connected to emotions, including anger, fear, and even tenderness. The spirituality of disagreement comes in the contemplation, the willingness to consider alternative points of view, and the humanity of those holding those views. When disagreement leads to deeper research, broader conversations, broader listening, that's where the spirituality lies. In considering alternative points to explore and the richness of broadening our thinking and seeing the humanity in others. Next year, when our beloved principles take their expected new shape, we'll proceed best by focusing on our common desire to ensure Buff continues its presence in this community, ensuring liberal religious have a place to worship, gather, commune, develop friendships, relationships, explore ideas together, and use disagreement to look even more deeply into issues. The remaining words today are from Reverend Beth's 2016 message, though I've expanded in a few places to broaden the scope to include discernment of Article 2. And as a footnote, before I proceed, if you're interested in reading more about Article 2 proposals, you can visit discuss.uua.org or a Facebook group called Blue Boat Passengers. Both sites are closed for comments now, but they're still available to read past contributions, and they're rich with varying points of view. And now, final words from Reverend Beth. It's important for us to recognize that we do not all think alike, even within the wise walls of Unitarian Universalism churches, and that those with whom we disagree are neither all wrong nor ill-intentioned, neither are they ignorant. Their experiences are different, their perceptions are different, their interpretations are different, their conclusions are different. And different does not necessarily mean wrong. Human beings are a wildly diverse group of creatures, delightfully different in their tastes, likes, dislikes, desires, and ambitions. They differ in their experience of the senses, in what they like to eat, what smells and scents appeal to them, and what feels good to them physically. In addition to these sensory kinds of differences, we all interpret things differently as well. Even this message will be colored with the tints and hues of your own uniquely personal past interpretations, learning, and experiences. Human beings are never static, and as we move through our lives, we take each experience, no matter how trivial or seemingly insignificant, each encounter, each conversation had or overheard, each tiny nuance of mood, tone, or attitude, every behavior, no matter how slight or routine, and we add it to the growing store of knowledge that makes us who we are. We apply it to what we understand to be true, work it around to fit into our growing understanding of how the world works, toss it into our ever-growing, ever-personal evidence pool, where we assign it meaning, and where ultimately it gives shape to our ethics, values, and belief systems. In a cyclical way, our experiences inform our values, and our values inform our experiences. It can also be hard to discern whether our own thoughtfully considered views are truly our own or ingrained from parental influences from childhood experiences. This is true for most of us about many different issues. The fact is, we don't know quite where those lines are drawn when it comes to our values and belief systems. Even those of us who adopt very different values from those of our parents cannot divorce their influence in the shaping and forming of those divergent values. These differences in who we are, what we believe, and how we come to embrace particular beliefs and discard others are important factors in understanding why we differ so vastly on issues that matter to us so much. They're important in helping us come to terms with the fact that those who do not agree with us are not evil and not necessarily even wrong, at least not always. Many of us have especially struggled with these issues in the political arena. Many of us have been appalled at the rhetoric of one or another candidate and utterly disbelieving that anyone could possibly embrace their bids to lead their constituents or this country. Politics and religion can certainly push our limits around tolerance of differing views. So it's important to keep in mind as we proceed into election cycles and UUA discussions that support of one candidate, message, or direction over another does not arise out of a place of idiocy or evil intent. Rather, it likely arises out of fear, real and raw fear for the world, our denomination, and our lives therein. It likely arises out of fear and differing views about how to make the world more safe, our lives more abundant, our denomination more welcoming, and our future more secure. Fear is a very specific and highly personal emotion. Understanding that in ourselves and others can help us move from a place of anger and scorn to a place of compassion and caring. And it's in that place of compassion and caring where friendships, families, and congregations torn asunder by debate may begin to be salvaged, may begin to be healed. May it be so.
As we go out with love in our hearts, let's extend that love to people that cross our path.